So let's talk about this cool little vintage lens that I just picked up. This is an Mamiya Sekor 55mm f1.8. So for this review, I'm not going to get super deep. I'm not going to get super technical. I'm just going to show you some images from a project that I recently did using this lens. And I'm going to talk about my personal experience and how I thought the lens performed. Now, actually, the way I came across this lens was I got it from my dad. Now, he had a box of old lenses laying around. He gave me a few of them, and this happened to be in that box. Now, this particular lens right here was from the 1970s. It was made in Japan, and this is an M42 screw mount lens. So let me start by saying that this lens is actually pretty amazing. Now, when I was first testing it out, I wasn't 100% sure. But as I went back and I started reviewing my footage, I really started to fall in love with this lens. Now, one of the first things that's going to jump out at you is the build quality. Like most vintage lenses from that time era, right? It's all metal. It's got a nice smooth focus throw on there. And also the aperture ring, it isn't declicked, but it's still pretty smooth. So if you're going to be using this for video, keep that in mind. So let's just jump right into it. Let me start listing off a few of the things that I love the most about this lens. So the very first thing I love about this lens, hands down, is the image quality. The images that you get from this lens are absolutely beautiful. It's at that nice focal length of 50 millimeters, well, actually 55 millimeters. So it's not super tight, but it's not super wide, which makes it really good for portraits. It also has really nice contrast. You can get some beautiful images with this lens. The next thing I love about this lens is how sharp it is, right? It's super sharp, but it's also soft, right? It gives you that kind of a filmic type of a look, right? That cinematic look that a lot of people are looking for. It's always nice when you have something that's in focus, right? That's like dead on, right? But you know that you have certain lenses in your kit that, like, when they are sharp, they are on the money sharp. And this is one of those lenses. I mean, when it's sharp, it is tack sharp, but it also has that nice balance. It's also soft, right? And it gives you this beautiful bouquet. It just kind of falls off. It kind of rolls off. It just, oh man, I don't know how to explain it, but what I will say is it is the look that you're looking for, especially when you're shooting with a prime lens. So if you're shooting something like a 35, a 50, or an 85, and you're looking for that certain type of bouquet, right? You know it when you see it. This lens has that. Now, another thing that I love about this lens, as I mentioned earlier before, is the focus throw on here, right? The focus ring. Now, the throw is super long. It's like 300 degrees, right? You're almost turning this thing all the way around. But I love it because, first of all, it's super smooth. And by having such a long focus throw, it lets you really dial in on the sharpness and the focus of your images. So the project that I used it on was basically a passion project. It was something that I was doing for myself. I knew I had this lens and I've been meaning to test it out, but I also wanted to test it out like in a meaningful way, right? Not just going around and filming random stuff. I wanted to really put it to use on a project. Now, one of the things I found so interesting because of the shallow depth of field that you can get off of this lens is that the space that I was shooting in was actually pretty tight, right? Now, preferably I would have used 35 millimeter if I'm gonna go with a prime lens because, you know, it's wide, but it's also tight enough to get some nice portraits and to get some nice framing. But at the same time, like I said, I wanted to test out this lens and that's what I was doing. And what I saw was that this lens actually made the space look bigger. Like I said, I wouldn't reach for my 50 millimeter lens in this particular space because it was so tight. But for some reason, this lens made the space just appear bigger. And I don't know if it's the, the compression that you're getting, but I really ended up, enjoying this lens. I was actually super surprised, super impressed by how well it performed. Which brings me to my next point is that this lens is actually really cheap. You can get it online right now, say at an eBay or something along those lines for about $45 to $60. And for that price, it's a no-brainer. Hands down, 45 to 60 bucks. This lens, you gotta have it in your kit. I'm serious. I would have never checked for this lens if my dad didn't give it to me, but I am so thankful that he did. This is actually one of those lenses that's always gonna be on me. This is always gonna be an option. Now, enough gloating about this lens, let's talk about some cons. So for me personally, I didn't really have any cons. I guess the only one that I could point out is that the lens does tend to shoot or render colors a little bit on the warmer side. Now, if you're looking at this lens, you can kind of see that the glass actually kind of has like a little bit of a yellow tinge. Now, don't get nervous, it's not radioactive, or at least that's what research online says, right? But with some of these older lenses, they used a product called thorium, which was to, help the quality of the lens, which turned out to be radioactive. So you can come across some of these old vintage lenses and they are radioactive. There are ways to fix them. I don't know how to do that, but you can Google it. But either way, don't worry about it because this particular lens right here is not radioactive. And for me, that's really the only con that I can think of, is that it tends to shoot a little bit on the warmer side, which isn't super hard to correct in post. So for potentially 50 bucks, you can have this amazing lens in your kit. It's actually super cheap. I'm surprised when I looked it up and I saw the prices of it, because if I bought this lens for $50, I would be very pleased. So to me, this is a no-brainer. If you can find this lens, you gotta get it. Now, admittedly, I haven't used it for any photography work just yet, but on the video side of things, I'm completely sold. This lens, if you see it at a great deal, and all the deals basically are gonna be pretty great, for the quality that you're gonna get out of this lens and the price that you are gonna pay, you gotta do it. So hopefully that was useful and helpful, and if so, give me a like, drop me a comment, let me know about some of the vintage lenses that you guys are using right now. And until the next time, keep on doing what you're doing and keep on shooting. Peace.